Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the Belly Up Sports 100, the 12th race of the fall season for the Esports Racing League presented by SimSeats at Martinsville Speedway in Ridgeway, Virginia. I have James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, alongside Justin Prince, our producer Ryan Bauer, powered by Top Flight Computers, bringing you all the pictures and visuals from this evening's penultimate race of the fall season for the Esports Racing League. JP, we know how tough Martinsville can be. This will preview what the drivers in real life are going to see this weekend, albeit under a bit of a time crunch, just now finishing up the racing in Texas. But this is a tough place to get around quickly. Doesn't matter how you slice it. Doesn't matter how old this place is.
Yes, indeed. This is a track with a lot of history. It's been one of, if not the longest current NASCAR Cup Series track on the calendar, but it's also one of its most chaotic on the iRacing service. Just above half a mile of this track, 12 degrees of banking, very long straightaways, very tight corners, hard braking into each and every one of the corners. And of course, known for physical contact at this racetrack, with the bottom line being known as the dominant line with the low downforce package on the short track, especially here. This is going to be one of the most challenging races, James, all season, because not just because of the importance to race well here, but the importance of making sure you're not caught up in any of the mayhem tonight.
Time to go through the starting grid, tell you where your favorite driver will take off. It's Richmond Raceway Esports' Jimmy Mullis, who won here in the ERL in the spring, starting on pole with a time of 19.359 seconds, ahead of Brandon McKissick. Connor Horn, your points leader, starts in third, and Nathan Rabideau rolls off tonight from fourth. Fifth will be the 62 of Cody McCauley. Presley Soares starts in sixth. Seventh will be the 55 of Brett Gardner. Blake McCandless starts from the 8th position. Ninth will be the 61 of Steven Rosales, and Alex Bell starts from 10th.
Ryan Kendrick, one of the drivers looking to try and fight his way into the top 10 by the end of the season, starts 11th, but Nick Miller in 12th. Colton Zimmer and Nick Endelicado, keep an eye on him. One of your championship competitors rounding out the top 14. He is tight in those point standings entering tonight. Lucas Cram and Colton Salick decided to stay at the back of the field tonight. They did not set in qualifying times. Dylan Basin, of note, will cycle down to 21st. The drivers that move up as a result: Anthony Alfredo will move to 17th. Kobe Wells, John Midget, and Adam Nettins round out those drivers.
We turn now from the starting grid to our track facts here at Martinsville Speedway in Ridgeway, Virginia. Technically speaking, it is 0.526 miles, 0.847 kilometers in length. This track opened in 1947. It is the oldest continually operating track on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit, just ahead of Darlington Raceway in South Carolina. 12 degrees of banking in the corners here, no banking on the straightaways. In sim, we race on the default day for iRacing, May 15th, 2020, just about 12:45 p.m. Eastern Time, local time. And we'll go for 100 laps, 52.6 miles, 84.7 kilometers under decently warm skies, but a hot track. 69 degrees Fahrenheit air temp, 104 degrees Fahrenheit track temp. Winds to the west at 3 miles an hour and humidity of 58%. Usually when we come to Martinsville, we see plenty of yellow flags. Will the smaller field help in that regard, JP?
Possibly, I think, but the main thing's going to be it's up to how the drivers want this to play out. Because if they're over aggressive early, we're going to have a lot of yellows, obviously. If they're patient and smart with their decision making, then we're going to have a clean one.
Let's turn our attention now to the man who came home with a top 3 at Texas just a little bit ago. Anthony Alfredo now joins us up at the booth. And Anthony, what can we expect from these drivers tonight?
We can expect all sorts of action because we are short track racing here at Martinsville Speedway, and these guys are about to take the green flag. As you can see, Jimmy Mullis leading them to green. He's our defending winner of this race, so I'm excited to see these guys go to work and beat and bang bumpers. See who comes home with the check flag and $50 prize thanks to Belly Up Sports.
Belly Up Sports, the presenting partner of tonight's race as we go green flag racing, and Jimmy Mullis out in front very quickly. Horn got to the bottom 2. Brandon McKissick immediately to 3rd, so it's Nathan Rabideau racing alongside Cody McCauley. That's your first battle on track, and that's for the 4th position.
Should be no surprise to see Jimmy Mullis up at the front. A short track ace, especially when it comes to the flat short tracks. We've seen the success in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series at New Hampshire. This track does have some tendencies with the front stretch, of course, but it's not quite as simple. We only have a car spun out of the back of the field.
One car way around to the back. It's Dylan Basin in the 08 machine, and another car around the back straightaway. Cody McCauley in the 62 sideways and around. So those two drop to the back. Rabideau now clear to 4th, and Brett Gardner assumes the 5th position.
Let's not forget we have the low downforce package on these NASCAR Cup Series cars here at Martinsville Speedway. So what that means is there's less overall downforce on the car, which ultimately results in less grip. So these cars are not going to handle as well. They're not going to have as much drive off the corner, and that means that the drivers won't be able to accelerate as aggressively as they might like to. They're going to have to be really smooth on the throttle as if there's an eggshell underneath it. Going to have to be really smooth on that, and not only that, but their steering inputs and braking as well, because they're not going to have enough grip to attack the corner very aggressively. So if they do that, it might only last a lap or two like when they qualified here, but in order to last the entire length of a whole fuel run, depending on if this race goes green long enough and they end up pitting under green, definitely going to have to save their tires. Otherwise, they're going to fall to the back very quickly.
You're right in that we do have the low downforce package, but Martinsville never has been a place that's been about downforce. It's been about tire wear and saving your tires, especially on corner exit, finding the way to roll through the throttle to hit the optimal torque curve in order to get enough push off those rear wheels to get down these straightaways. Just how tricky is that here? How hard is that to do, especially in sim?
Well, one thing Justin mentioned earlier was Jimmy Mullis specifically being super successful at these flat short tracks in particular. And with the track being flatter, that ties into what you were saying about it being even more difficult to get the power down, attack corner entry, attack corner exit, and roll the center quickly, which rolling the center here at Martinsville Speedway is crucial. If your car can't cut the center of the corner very well, you're going to struggle heavily, really wear the right front tire out, and sometimes even the right rear tire, because you're going to have so much steering wheel input into the car that when you try to accelerate, the car will eventually catch. And what that means is it's going to over rotate, and then you're going to step out sideways and slide the rear tires. So with a flatter track, you combat those things more so than at places with more banking, because obviously the more banking, the more forgiving it is with those things, allowing you to handle more speed and carry more speed on corner entry, exit, and so on, as we see Dylan Basin go a lap down here to Jimmy Mullis.
So Basin goes a lap down. McCauley's up the road. He's about maybe a half a track away from Jimmy Mullis at this time. Mullis entering 3 and McCauley entering 1. But that's only about a 10-second gap as Mullis has already jumped out to commanding second lead over Connor Horn. And I think, and Anthony touched on it a little bit and hinted at it too, JP, that this is a track where if you try and get on the gas too quickly, too early, especially on the front end of these green flag runs, you may have the grip in order to get great drive off the corner. You might be able to gain some time, but if you burn those tires out, you will be sliding all over the place on the back end of the green flag run on corner exit. And anytime you make up on the front end of it, you will get back and then some if we get a long green flag run tonight.
Seen a perfect example just coming out of turn 4 that time by with Lucas Cram. These cars are already getting fairly loose. It's a hot racetrack tonight. Fall already up to 7/10 for some of these cars in these types of packs such as this one. Mullis, he's been able to save them and only have half a second of fall. That in turn means if you're not able to get good corner exit because you're going to have to try and be more careful on the throttle or you snap around, that's where drivers are going to try and take advantage of that and not want to get held up so much with there being only 100 laps on the docket and try and set it underneath you in turns 1 and 2 or in 3 and 4, depending on where you get loose. You can see right here, especially, you get underneath somebody too on corner exit. That could also make it to where you're going to have to fight to make sure you don't snap it, especially at turn 1 and 2, because there's a dip that if you hit it with this type of car, you're snapping and spinning it around.
You also have to be careful, too. Dylan Basin just got punted a few laps ago by Brandon McKissick. He was trying to get out of the way, but came down and slammed the door on McKissick, and I think got the memo pretty quickly that if you're a lap car, you go up high to avoid running into your race leaders. So Basin slides up top. And now, Anthony, I think I want to turn to Rabideau, to Gardner, to McKissick, to some of these drivers that are right behind Horn and Mullis. What is your game plan if you are any of those drivers who are largely clear of any battles? They're just about running it. Do you make the press to go after Mullis, or do you try and stretch these tires a little bit more to come in later so you have fresher rubber at the very end of this race if it stays green?
That's a great question, and I think you're going to have to do whatever the leader does here. Otherwise, your only other choice is to pit completely off sequence. And by off sequence, I don't mean a couple of laps. I mean quite a few in order to put yourself in position and gain a significant amount of track position to better yourself towards the end of a long green flag run and most importantly, the end of this race. But that being said, if you're able to keep the leader in your sights, you can kind of, you know, with the gap Jimmy Mullis has over everyone behind him, they'll see when he comes to pit road in time. So if they see him come to pit road, they'll either come with him, stick with him, or maybe just try to run it longer, pit later, so that they have fresher tires at the end of this race. But that's all what racing comes down to is those kinds of strategies. And the unfortunate part of them is there's so much uncertainty in racing and things change so quickly. So it's easy to say or head into a race with a plan, but as soon as a caution comes out at a random point in time, you have to come up with a whole new strategy typically. So it can make it very difficult. And like I said, I think a lot of these guys are just going to have to judge it off our race leader.
Jumping in here, Anthony, on this one, though, one thing to note, just as that point was starting off there, Nick and Delgado was second in the points entering tonight, just 3 points behind your leader, Connor Horn. He had been loose the past couple of laps, as we're seeing here on these replays and getting shuffled about. As you also seen, he is done for the night. He got it back rolling and lost the lap, and he's already parked it as a result. That can be huge, and in turn, makes it a 2-car scrap for the championship between Horn and Salek. This is why Delgado's out after contact with Bell, who's had a rough night.
Bell came off the wall on corner exit and came down into Indelicado, and they came together right around the front trailer, right on board with Colton Salek, who was right behind all of this as it took place, and he had to get on the binders and put together a pretty solid evasive maneuver or two to make sure he didn't get swept up in that wreck himself. Looks like he got some damage to the right side of his car up along the wall or one and two, just getting out of the way there. But you're all right. Indelicado out, so yes, this is now Colton Salek and Connor Horn for the title. And Salek came into tonight 8 points back of Connor Horn and currently runs in the 12th spot while Horn is in P2. That would stretch Horn's lead to a very solid about 17, 18 points or so, depending on how it plays out.
And I don't blame the decision, of course, for the 99, the Salek starting at the back, but that's one of the risks is you're going to have to get the track position, and it's not quite so simple here at Martinsville if you don't have a lot of attrition. And guess what? We haven't had a lot of attrition. We're talking about this before the start of the race, where it was either going to be one where attrition spiked up, or we get what we have now, where you get nice, clean racing and everyone plays fairly smart. You have some great battles, yes, and some aggression pop up here and there for the most part. It's been very clean. The drivers have been smart. The drivers have been able to build up their own space like Jimmy Mullis, and that in turn has all helped them.
I'll also give a shout out to our race control and acknowledge why they did not throw the caution right there. And I guess by the time most of the cars had made it through that incident, there was only a single car crash when driver had been turned into the inside wall, spun around in the entry to turn one, but was able to keep it rolling. And since all drivers did such a great job keeping their cars pointed in the right direction and keeping them rolling, they avoided the caution there. And we know how cautions typically breed cautions here at Martinsville Speedway, and with 100 laps here tonight slated for the schedule, it's going to be important for the drivers to keep a cool head on their shoulders. And as they're spread out right now, I think it's a little bit easier to do.
As we stay green flag racing, remind you that tonight's broadcast of the Esports Racing League is presented by SimSeats. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality driving simulators, including motion systems, custom fabricated parts, and complete turnkey iRacing packages, all made in the United States. Their customer base includes all kinds of drivers, from amateurs to professionals, and their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Don't limit your track time to the weekend. Visit www.sim-seats.com for more information. I think at this point, we know how good Jimmy Mullis can be. We've seen how quality he can be on the flat tracks. Got the win in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series at New Hampshire earlier in July of this year. But Connor Horn, he's had some bad luck the last few weeks, and that got taken out late at Texas, got taken out late at Kansas, and that's why we have a battle. But you turned either one of those finishes into the solid runs that he had been putting forth throughout those races, JP. And I'm not even certain that we have a title fight to worry about. Connor Horn's just been that consistently good all season long.
Yeah, he's been constantly inside the top 5 and top 10 for the most part, outside of when he didn't qualify for one of the opening races of the season. But the main thing that's also kept this a fight and not open up the door for Salick is Colton Salick in turn has gotten into several incidents. Heck, at Texas, after Horn had his incident, Salick got in the next caution flag and he got demolished, and in turn couldn't capitalize on that to take the points lead. It's been like that for a couple weeks, and that's been the saving grace for a driver like Horn tonight, to keep his championship hopes alive and to secure and keep that points lead. He's doing his job tonight. That's the main thing. Just got to keep himself away from drafting or groupings rather such as these.
Very tight groupings at Martinsville do tend to lead to trouble. The tightest grouping on the track, though, happens to be the battle for the 7th position, which we'll take you to now. It's Steven Rosales and Blake McCandless that are running nose to tail. And McCandless here, I think, just waiting for his moment to try and put pressure down and make sure that he can get a run somewhere here on this 61 machine. And if you're in McCandless' spot, you've got a slightly faster car, albeit not by much. And so what do you do and how do you play this, given that Rosales doesn't really have much traffic ahead of him?
Definitely just got to be patient here. I think with what we've seen so far this race and the extent of this green flag run in particular, these drivers need to be able to just keep a cool head on their shoulders and be able to avoid an incident. We saw one car get loose there off of turn 2, but as I mentioned before, with how spread out it is, there's no reason to force the issue, right? On a restart, when cars are closer together, it's easier to put a lot of pressure on someone because you know that's your best opportunity to gain a lot of track position. You're so tempted to pass as many cars as possible, but as I mentioned before, with how spread out it is currently, I think you take your time, work the pass and the maneuver methodically. Don't wear your stuff out too much trying to make the move, and sometimes just being in the rearview mirror of the driver in front of you is enough to make them make a mistake because you just keep the pressure on them.
We know that the restarts make everyone closer and bring everyone more bunched up when it comes to the spacing of the field. And by extension, that does tend to be the best time to make passes, as you said. But what about tire wear in that regard? If you have 20-lap old tires and the driver you're trying to pass is 20 old lap tires, does that make a difference compared to maybe 50, 60, 70 lap old tires? If you got the same tire where as the driver you're trying to pass, but the tires are older, is it harder to pass then than it might be earlier on in the road?
Well, in my opinion on that, James, it takes, in the first place, up to 10 laps to set up a pass here because it's a rhythm track, and anything that breaks your rhythm can hold you up. And it takes a little bit to gain enough time to be able to position yourself to make a pass and get to the bottom of somebody. And also do it in a way where you can actually complete the pass. At the same time as well, it takes a little bit longer and more difficult to make the move as these runs go on. Here's a good example. Dylan Basin had to pit because he was so loose, he was nearly spinning it down off the racetrack every single corner. Same case going on right in front of him, in fact, is another good example. Some of these cars are struggling so bad with tire wear, they are floating, it seems, on the right rear tires. They might lose the right rear tires at this rate. To put it simply, James, the more the tires wear, absolutely the harder it's going to get at this rate.
One thing I want to go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Anthony. You've got a good point here.
Well, I was going to mention one thing in particular that's unique about Martinsville Speedway is, as you can see, looking at the racing surface, is the light gray in the corners. And what that is, that's actually concrete. So the racetrack is paved. It's asphalt pavement up until the corner, where only half of the racing surface actually goes up to the middle of the racetrack, is sectioned concrete. So you actually notice that transition when you enter the corner and when you exit the corner, but it's mainly corner entry where that can create an issue for drivers because you brake so heavily to enter these flat corners that when you cross that transition, the car actually bounces across that, and you also gain more grip as you hit the concrete transition from the pavement. So what that does is lead to easy lockup of the front tires, and on corner exit, it's easy to spin the tires when you transition from the concrete to the pavement. So that could pose a threat to these drivers, and something that they have to be conscious of as they run here, especially on older tires.
I think that also lends credence to a theory that we've heard many a time when it comes to racing at Martinsville. And it's true generally in racing, but especially true here, where you want to try and get the majority of your braking done earlier rather than later and roll off the brake pedal as you get towards the center of the corner. It's not necessarily a place where you want to stab and hold the brake all the way down with an even amount of pressure as you decelerate, but it's more of a gradual stab in, get out, and then roll back then the throttle slowly on corner exit, which is part of the challenge, I think, here at Martinsville, JP. It's only a half mile, and yes, it is shaped like a paperclip, but it's the how you get around here that trips up so many drivers and has put them in so much trouble throughout the year.
And it's not just with the concrete, as Anthony mentioned, which is a great point, but also you mentioned with the braking, you have to get your brake bias calculated right. You need to have your preferences for your brake mark locked in near perfectly, and also have confidence to be able to send it in later if you have to, because you send it in too deep, you're sliding up and missing the whole bottom of the racetrack. Even half a lane, you lose that bottom. If you're in tight pack of cars, you're likely having some dive underneath you. For comparison's sake, you back it up too much, that puts you up for grabs for somebody to try and make a move on you. So all that timing is so vital with this. At this point, already 2 seconds of fall off at the halfway point of this race. This is astounding. Cars are drifting up to the fence just about down the front.
Slipping and sliding around, and almost looks like they're just splashing around in the bathtub the way they keep on moving up towards the wall and just moving all over the place on this racing surface. But as we have crossed the midway point of tonight's race, it is time to bring you the iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. Jimmy Miller's your race leader by 3 seconds over Connor Horn. Probably in the mood to atone for the very near miss he had last night. Was in position to make the championship 4, for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series until a wreck on the back straightaway with about 2 laps to go took him out of contention. This wouldn't necessarily be everything, but it would be a bit of redemption in what's been a very tough week already. Connor Horn, your points leader, sitting in second and doing everything he needs to do to put himself in a position to potentially clinch the title just by starting next week at Phoenix. Brandon McKissick in the 24 cars P3, as we've got one car sideways over in 3 and 4, and the yellow flag will come out. I believe that is Lucas Cram, JP. So Lucas Cram brings out the yellow, and we'll pause our midway race break and find out what happened to the 44 car.
Yeah, these cars have been starting to drift all the way up in the middle of the corner, and Jimmy Mullis was ready to lap them. But the main thing is, both of them were so loose that Cram, I think, started drifting down into the corner. Mullis actually drifted up. They made contact right here, and that's enough to spin around the Ford Mustang. He was stopped in the middle of the race group, too. That had to trigger the caution flag with the battle for second coming.
It did, and how close was Connor Horn to hitting the 44 machine? He had to go down across the curb on the inside of the track. Brandon McKissick actually caught the side of the 44 machine. That's the one car that you saw making contact with Lucas Cram's Ford Mustang. So McKissick now has damage as everybody else got to the inside to get away from Lucas Cram. But pit stops are coming here, and Jimmy Mullis will lead the field down to pit road for service, and I assume it's got to be 4 tires here, right, Anthony?
Yeah, has to be. If you stay out here, good luck for the rest of the race. Let's put it that way. And the pit box selection is going to be crucial here as well for when you come in, because you pit at the back part of the lineup, as in, say, around the front stretch. You do risk losing a lap if you take too long in the box. That's why you see Colton Salek come down the second time around. Everyone else coming around the first. And hearing as well, Dylan Basin, who was in line just about for the lucky dog spot in the battle with Nick Miller. He's apparently saying his force feedback is now out and his steering wheel is having a burning feel in his car. So the 08 may be done for the night, and is.
Dylan Basin will pull it behind the wall and is done. Technical issues on the wheel for that iron machine. As Jimmy Mullis is your race leader, and now we'll take the chance to go through the full field rundown and tell you where your favorite driver currently sits. Mullis, your leader, then Horn. Brett Gardner now is in the 3rd position after a great pit stop. Blake McCandless jumps up to 4th. 5th is the 93 of Nathan Rabideau. Steven Rosales runs in 6th. 7th belongs to Ryan Kendrick. Colby Wells is 8th. 9th is Cody McCauley, and 10th goes to Brandon McKissick.
Cody McCauley currently scored among your top 10 cars, but once scoring cycles through Presley Sora will cycle to 11. Colton Zimmer, Colton Salek coming off the pit lane 12th and 13th. Adam Nettins in 14th. John Majette, Lucas Cram, Nick Miller, the last cars on track. Basin out of the race with steering wheel issues. Bell out of the race from a crash. Nick and Delicato out of the race from an incident. And of course, Anthony Alfredo is with us tonight. Interesting race so far, James.
And that concludes your iRacing Midway race break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. We'll also remind you of the events coming up in what is a very big week in the world of iRacing. Just at the top of the hour, next hour, that is, the Cars Esports Tour heads to the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway to crown champions and conclude its 2020 season. It'll be live at 9 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. And then Monday night, the Shin 500 Trans Service Cup Series heads to Martinsville. November 2nd, 9 p.m. Eastern time. You need to mark in your calendars. Also on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. Then, more importantly, 8 p.m. Eastern Monday night as well. It is the championship for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from Homestead Miami Speedway. You can see that at 8 p.m. next Monday night on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube as Jimmy Mullis gets us back underway on lap 61 of 100. Horn to second. McCandless got to 3rd ahead of Gardner. So Rabideau will fall in line. You have to go all the way back to Cody McCauley and Brandon McKissick back in 9th and 10th to find the first side-by-side battle, JP.
And one of the crazy things with that run is drivers are reporting tire wear of only about 10, 15, 20% on their specific right side tires. they were feeling it was as low as 25 and 10, as in nearly blowing out the tires. That's just how crazy this tire wear is felt on these cars, but keep in mind, this is low downforce this year. Some of the drivers may not be adjusted to it here at Martinsville because it's a track that can be nerve-wracking on the official surface. So some of these cars and some of these drivers may be adjusting to how these cars feel to now with this current package compared to how you were able to carry a bit more speed and get the middle line to work with the high downforce last year.
It is such a different track when you run it without downforce, Anthony, and the removal of the big blade spoiler and the little blade big motor package that has been so beloved, I think, over the last few years. It comes back and it completely changes the way you drive.
Absolutely, and I've been very fortunate to compete in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, where they're more like the older Cup cars, where they ran this low downforce package we see here at the short tracks and the road courses, including Martinsville Speedway, of course, tonight. But it's that everywhere pretty much in the Xfinity Series, and drive for Richard Childress Racing and the number 21 Chevrolet Camaro. I've experienced what that does for you at high-speed tracks, lower-speed tracks, both short tracks, intermediate, super speedways, of course. And it's very interesting to have that high-horsepower motor with a lower downforce aerodynamic package. And at some places, bringing up the tire wear, it's pretty amazing as well, because one track in particular I remember racing at was Kentucky Speedway, where we had a double-header this year. And both those races went really well for me. And I remember fighting the balance tremendously on the race car as the length of a run had gone on, or throughout the length of a stage. And what actually surprised me was when I keyed up over the radio and was asking if, one time I pitted and I said, is the right front tire okay? How does the wear look? Because I swear I was about to blow a tire right there. And they said, the right front tire hardly wore at all, is what my crew chief responded with. And I was in disbelief. And I feel like the drivers have that same idea right here, except it's a little bit different. It's more so with the wear of the rear tires. But as far as being surprised by these tires not wearing as much as we would have expected, or what it feels like to the drivers, is something I can definitely relate to from a driver aspect.
And how does that change your mentality, JP, when you come through all of this and you look down and you see wear numbers of, 75, 80%, and you thought it was 20, you realize just how much further that right rear could go down and how much more grip you could lose, even though you thought you had all of it gone already at the end of that run?
As everyone starts freight training Ryan Kendrick, honestly, I'd be saying I need more practice to try and get used to how this is going to feel, or more laps turned overall, whether in traffic or in space, because that is something you just need to get used to in part, I think, and just kind of the balance on how these tires are, because they do have this tendency at times in the short tracks, especially the flatter ones, to get to that. But this is to where it's gone to the over top side here tonight. But Ryan Kendrick is stuck on that top line, though, James. That's the downside here if you're him. Remember, we talked about this. He was P11 entering tonight, 5 points out of the top 10.
Not terribly far removed from the top 10 now World Series. He continues to work his way around the racetrack, and Connor Horn has done a better job of keeping up with Jimmy Mullis for the race lead in this second green flag run. The problem is that he's still giving up 7/10 of a second to a race lead in the 46. And then how about Blake McCandless out in the P3? I mean, he's just in a steady charge through this field. Started in 8th and has methodically picked off the drivers ahead of him one by one to the point where he's looking at potentially his best finish of the fall season in the ERL.
I agree completely, and one thing I want to point out is that the results don't speak to volumes of what Blake has done in the Esports Racing League this season. He's been extremely competitive in pretty much every single race he's run, but I don't think he's got the end results as he had hoped because of whether he had a mechanical failure, was caught up in a wreck at the end, or something like that. So to see him having the run that he's been working so hard for and has the speed to get done is pretty cool to see, and I know it's got to be rewarding for him, although we still have another quarter of the way to go in this race as we just crossed the line for lap 76 of 100.
And as we enter the final quarter of tonight's race, we remind you that tonight's Belly Up 100 is brought to you by our friends at Belly Up Sports, the Internet Sports Bar. Whether you like podcasts, forums, or articles, Belly Up Sports has you covered. They aren't ESPN, Yahoo, Deadspin, or Barstool, nor do they want to be. But the people you want to hang out with, not the people you want to avoid, belly up with them at www.bellyupsports.com. Jimmy Mullis has led this race from the top of the green flag. Connor O'Horn is keeping it close. It's maybe 9/10 of a second now, but those two have left Blake McCandless in the dust. It's about 2.5 seconds back from the orange-green bumper to McCandless' front bumper. And then you have some really good battles in front, but Colby Wells has gone around over in turn 2, and that's bunched up everyone for another yellow flag, and I have a feeling that means we're going to see a few short stints towards the end of this. We'll take a look at the replay, JP, but pretty simple incident here. Looks like the 62 of Cody McCauley didn't get on the brakes in time and got into the back of the 77.
Yeah, pretty clear cut right there. Missed his braking mark by at least a few feet, and because of that, started sliding. Almost looked like he started to lock him up a little bit, and right to the back bumper of Colby Wells. Bunched up Lucas Cram and a couple others. And like I talked about, you miss your braking mark, you're likely missing the bottom. If there's a car in front of you, you're likely punting that car off from the bottom and spinning them around. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the paperclip. There's a reason one of the nicknames for this track is the Half Mile Mayhem. And now we may start to see that come into fruition, because this has just opened up the Pandora's box of strategy calls.
It really has changed the way everybody's going to look at this race as Blake McCandless takes 2 tires to jump out in front of everybody. And it will be McCandless who wins the race off of pit road ahead of Jimmy Mullis, Connor Horn, Nathan Rabideau. So I turn to our resident driver to examine that strategy a little bit further. 2 tires for 20 laps to go. Pending a green-white checker finish if we have a yellow within the final few laps, Anthony. What's the strategy here that Blake's trying to play, and do you like it?
Well, this is definitely interesting because right before that caution came out, I was going to acknowledge the tire wear we've spoke about all race long. And one thing I want to point out was after that first run, these drivers were able to see what their tire was the first time. And even though they were surprised with how little the wear was, they know how dramatic the balance shift was, which means that they were definitely going to have to attack that second run of the day much differently, be more patient, do what they could to save the car throughout the rest of this race. Well, now with this caution, there's only 20 laps to go, actually less by the time we take the green flag. So what that means is they're going to be able to push pretty hard for these 20 laps and not have to worry about saving as much. However, we do have another caution or green-white checker that definitely opens up the door for some more strategy, but it seems like Blake's already taken the strategy to go ahead and advance himself with some new track position because of 2 tires. That was a decent length run there, so I'm curious to see where his left sides were at and if he's going to be too loose by taking right side tires only here. However, he could take 2 tires again if we get a caution here in a few laps and just take left side. So this is pretty interesting.
If you're McCandless, I think the most intriguing play of all would be is if we get another quick yellow and maybe you come down pit road for tires, maybe you don't. That's another question we have to ask ourselves here as well, because I think there's just as equally big a chance that he may end up going to the back if he decides to come down pit road and, say 2 or 3 laps if we have another yellow and everybody else stays out because they're on 4 fresh tires. It just becomes a game of what sort of threshold do these drivers believe use the amount of laps to get across and get around here in order to justify coming down for 4 fresh Eagles. We'll find out the answer momentarily as Blake McCandless will lead us to the green flag on lap 84 of 100 of the Belly Up Sports 100. We're back underway, back racing at Martinsville. And Jimmy Mullis with that big breakdown to the outside, or rather up to the outside, is going to stay even with the door panel of the 66. Nose ahead off into turn 3.
Honestly, I think this might be a decent call because he's right on the cusp of making a 2-tire call work. The problem is, Jimmy Mullis is, well, he's really good. And guess what? He's the only person who seems to have been able now to get the middle line to work with the low downforce to make the move. And now McCandless is starting to get loose here, and this is causing some problems now.
Connor Horn trying to get around Blake McCandless. Jimmy Mullis already clear, already gone, got about 2 or 3 car lengths. So, Anthony, there's what fresh tires can do for you.
Absolutely. You can see what the power of 4 new tires versus 2 does. Jimmy Mullis was able to make the non-preferred lane of this racetrack in the second groove work to take the lead back from Blake. And this is my concern right here. Blake had nothing to lose right there from that strategy as far as what his net gain could have been, which would have been not only 2 positions, but the actual race lead. Well, now, as we got a caution here in turn 1 and 2.
Yellow flag going to maybe come out, or no. We'll wait to see what race control does. But 2 or 3 cars sliding around in the middle. It's Brett Gardner and Nathan Rabideau, who are running about 4th and 5th, and the yellow flag is out. But Gardner and Rabideau synchronized their spins over in turn 2 as they came through the, shall we call it maybe the higher elevation end of this track? I don't know if a lot of people know this, that Martinsville is built into a hillside a little bit. And it's the 1 and 2 end that's got more support than the 3 and 4. The grandstands that you see over in turns 3 and 4 are basically built on top of a rock slide hill. And so the supports go all the way down, maybe about 40 or 50 feet below what you see on the racetrack. They make it look much flatter than it is. But in either case, Gardner gets into Rabideau. Rabideau got finished off by Colton Salick, who was behind them and had nowhere to go when they checked up. Cody McCauley had nowhere to go. He got into the side of Nathan Rabideau before everybody stringed themselves back out and pointed their cars in the right direction, not before Rabideau and company lost all that track resistance, JP.
Yeah, just missed time the brakes, and McCauley, he picked the bottom. He was probably hoping they slid up, but instead they slid down the track, and now he's got a crunched up nose. Thankfully, there's only a few laps to go, so he might be okay and get away with it because it's Martinsville and you can get away with this type of damage here. But in that case, the cause, just I think a little bit deeper on the brakes once again, a little bit further back maybe than what Rabideau was expecting right there. Around the 55 at Gardner really started to park the bus in the middle of the apex, and that's where the contact started to initialize there.
So now you would have thought Blake McCandless might have tried to come down here, and I wonder if he may well still, but this is the opportunity that I think you're looking for, JP. Maybe you want to reset your tires and get a little bit fresher rubber than everybody else.
I don't think a couple laps is going to matter, though, in the grand scheme of things, because I think he's made his bet on the strategy, and this caution really hurts him, if anything, I think, here, because they reset the field. We've seen how aggressive cars are going to be now with him, especially with Colton Sam going to be starting on his outside, mind you. This grip, based on the balance and what Anthony was referring to a little bit, just seems to be not like any other races here at this track usually, not helped whatsoever with the 2-tire calls, and he's finding this out the hard way, as we're seeing.
It's definitely going to be wild. And one thing I was pointing out right before that caution happened was the 2 tires versus 4, and the gain Blake had there, the potential 2 positions in the race lead, was not necessarily worth what he could potentially lose here being stuck on 2 tires to the rest of the competition that could be on 4, especially now that the field's getting stacked back up for this restart, as Justin just mentioned. Now, you know, he doesn't have that little bit of a gap and cushion to the cars behind him to kind of gap himself and do what he can to defend. So he's definitely in an odd spot here, and it's going to be difficult to fend off some of these other cars. But we still have just under 10 laps to go, and all these drivers have 3 sets of tires, and most of them have either used 1, 2 at most, so they should all have about 1 set left in the pits, if not 1.5 in Blake's case. So I'm interested to see what happens throughout the rest of this race, as well as 3 green, white checkered attempts if it comes down to that.
Which might be a case in which someone comes down and uses that last set of tires as we go back underway. And Jimmy Mullis got a great restart. Connor Horn did not. Horn spun the tires on the outside. And McCandless gets sent by Colton Salick up the racetrack, but gathers it back up. Yellow flag comes out, but Salick just did not bother with the brakes at all there. Got right into the back of the 66 machine, and we're back under yellow once again, JP.
How in the world didn't McCandless loop it around in front of the field? I'm not quite sure, but could see that kind of happening. There was a good launch on the bottom side, so Salick couldn't get to the outside. He just completely just dive bombed it hard to the bottom line, like absolutely hard. He wasn't even going to make the corner, I don't think. If he basically drove like he wasn't even going to be there. Apparently he wasn't expecting to slow it down so much, but Ford slowed down the exact same amount. That was just extremely hard and deep on the brakes for Salick, just sending the 2-tire call up the track, and that has just forced McCandless to pit because those tires are now shot.
So McCandless now forced into pitting, and after running in third, He now is scored in 14th. That's a net loss of -11. Remember, he was third when this rash of yellow flags began some 15 laps ago. And that goes back to the statistic Anthony was talking about just a little bit when he was discussing pros and cons of Blake's strategy. And I want to come back to that because I think that's a reasonable, rational, but an interesting way of looking at it. So when you do these exercises and try and figure out whether or not it's better to take two, better to take four, Anthony, for you, how big is potential net gain or loss a factor in your decision-making process?
It's huge, especially at a place like Martinsville Speedway. You definitely want to be towards the front, and as much as a lot of people want to keep them in separate categories, you can compare these races at short tracks like Martinsville to super speedway races, not in the sense of the high speeds, but the fact that the drivers are so tightly packed together. There's a lot of intense racing action, and track position is huge because of that. At a super speedway, you want to be in front of the field because if something happens, it's most likely going to be big. Well, now here we see drivers want to be in the front because it's the same reason. Cars stack up just like at that last caution, and fantastic job by the drivers keeping it straight. I'm sure race control threw the caution there because they thought that was going to be a lot bigger than it was. But that being said, in that situation where it could have been a huge wreck, being in the front of that is a big advantage, and that's why we see drivers have all sorts of unique strategy to put themselves in contention, not only to win, but just for track position. And when we go to the bigger tracks, like most of the intermediates we've run this season in the ERL, drivers do the same thing because track position at those places and having the advantage of what we consider clean air helps so much because there's more downforce on the car handles better, you're not in the air wake of a car in front of you. So that's not as prevalent as at a short track, but as I mentioned, for the sake of bottling up and wrecks happening, it puts yourself in a better position to keep your nose clean and have all the fenders on it for the end of the race.
Lights are out on the pace car, which means we will have an organic, GMO-free, cage-free, responsibly raised, ethically sourced, green-white checkered finish. Our good friend David Schildhouse can say you can find him at Schildhouse D here on Twitch. Schildhouse, not Shieldhouse, unless, as Kimmy Gooser would say, maybe you can pronounce it Shieldhouse. But in either case, this is Jimmy Mullis's house, as it's been all race. As Colton Salix meets the tires on the restart, Connor Horn will immediately be able to go to second from the outside, and Salix will try and fight off Brandon McKissick, but they're all chasing Jimmy Mullis, JP.
And they're spinning a wrecking behind them. The 55 of Brett Gardner around. No caution yet. Everyone else is off and rolling.
One more chance here. A few cars sideways in the middle of 3 and 4. White flag in the Belly Up Sports 100. Mullis, your leader in the one.
It's getting very hectic here. Cars still in the middle of the racetrack. Brett Gardner crashed again, and they're crashing even harder.
They crash on the back straightaway as Jimmy Mullis sets sail, and the driver of the number 46 Coca-Cola Energy Toyota Camry will sweep Martinsville in the ERL in 2020. He wins the Belly Up Sports 100 here at Martinsville. Connor Horn finishes second. Colton Stalick was third. To wrap it all up, a big drift there from Jimbo to get himself sideways and celebrating, but the Richmond Raceway Esports driver, flat track master, JP.
Yeah, Mullis absolutely dominated this race, but that's going to be a very hotly contested finish here with this one and down the backstretch. Brett Gardner self-spun going out of turn 2 and just completely shuffled the mid-pack of the top 10. What a finish, but what a run for Mullis overall, where he just dominated.
Mullis burns it down on the front straightaway after that wild wreck over in turn 2, and Jimmy Mullis comes away with yet another victory in the RL competition, and I think finally got some damage to the front end of his car and is going to decide to burn it down. But Jimmy Mullis, I think that might be win number 4 or 5 in the ERL in 2020 across the spring and the fall seasons, JP?
Give or take. There is a reason he's been one of the winningest drivers in this series' history. He isn't up there in the points, obviously, with some of the luck this year, but the speed's been there, especially with the car control, with drifts such as this, and not getting hits like that when we're under green flag conditions.
Jimmy Mullis is the man at Martinsville, and as he celebrates, it's time to take you through the full field rundown and tell you where your favorite driver finished. Jimmy Mullis is your race winner, ahead of your points leader, Connor Horn, who will go into next week with a 9-point lead on Colton Salick. That is the gap between the 67 and the 99 for the title when we head to Phoenix next Wednesday night. Presley Sora will come home fourth. Fifth was the 24, Brandon McKissick. Lucas Graham rebounded from that spin in turn 4 with about 20 laps to go to finish in 6th. Adam Needham's big run for the 7 car, 20th to P7. He's the hardest charger of tonight's race. It's Belly Up Sports 100. John Midget also with a good run from 19th to 8th. Ryan Kendrick went from 11th to 9th. And Colton Zimmer in the 88 finished in 10th after starting 13th.
Tony McCauley, 11th spot. Nathan Rabideau, Kobe Wells round out the lead lap cars with Blake McCandless 19 seconds back with chaos down the backstretch. Steven Rosales finishes 15th. Brett Gardner, he's going to have a lot of messages after tonight. Finishes 16th after what happened out of turn 2. Nick Miller, Dylan Basin, Alex Bell, Nick Indelicato, DNFs, and a DNS for Anthony Alfredo because, well, Anthony Alfredo was with us all night, it seems, James.
He was a little bit busy calling the race with us, but all fine, all well. We now turn our attention to the Richmond Raceway Esports driver, Jimmy Mullis. And Jimmy, something about this whole flat track thing, just right in your wheelhouse yet again. You sweep the Martinsville races in the ERL in 2020. Can you compare Martinsville in the day to Martinsville at night when we raced here in May?
I think, obviously the track is the same. Definitely a lot more grip when we were here back in May. And I think, this time around it was honestly a lot more fun just because you're slipping and sliding and there was absolutely no grip, especially after, the 30 or 40 laps we got on the tires. So it's nice to, come back and grab another win here, especially at this track. As you know, I love this place. I love all short tracks. So definitely gonna close the season out on a high note.
How much do you flip to maybe a dirt mentality almost when the tires are worn out here? We know that your teammate at Richmond Raceway Esports and Lockdown Racing, Zach Novak, has a little bit of World of Outlaws experience, and I would imagine it's not totally the same kind of driving, obviously, since we're on pavement, but especially on a slick track like this where temps are over 100, when the tires get worn out, to some degree, you almost have to treat this place like a dirt track and be willing to take advantage of the sliding that happens to get around here as fast as possible, no?
Oh, for sure. I'm not sure if you guys were paying too much attention to me on that long run, but I was really struggling just to get into the center of the corner, through the entry. I was really loose, and it took me a while to finally figure out the point, to back it up to and to get that optimum, center roll. But the main thing that is difficult is getting off the corner, that center off where you're trying to pick up the throttle, but the car doesn't really want you to is, the most difficult part for sure. And that's definitely, in my opinion, the most fun part. And I think that, like you said, works in my wheelhouse for sure.
And it's not like the place we're going to next week is entirely out of your wheelhouse either. There's a little bit more banking in Phoenix to close out the season, but it too is traditionally classified as a flat track. And even though we won't get the chance to see the Coke Series race there, maybe a little bit of a chance to show everybody what you can do there on a big platform next Wednesday night, no?
Oh yeah, Phoenix is definitely one of my favorite tracks. I was extremely disappointed earlier this year when we found out we weren't going to be going there in the Coke Series because, up until last night, I was really confident that I was going to have a shot at this thing. And, obviously unfortunate circumstances took place, but, you can't change it. Things happen. And we'll be back for sure next year. I look forward to that. But, Phoenix is another one of those tracks that I love. It's kind of like a Richmond, but with just a little bit less banking. So, it's definitely fun to try and get around that place.
Jimmy Mullis taking maybe a little bit from the Lane Riggs School of Driving. Lane pretty successful on the short tracks and the flat tracks throughout the Carolinas and Virginia. And Jimmy Mullis, the same. He gets the victory at Martinsville tonight. Who do you need to thank for making tonight's run possible, Jimmy?
Oh, as always, got to thank everybody at Richmond Raceway and Richmond Raceway Esports, Sim Seats, Sunoco, Coca-Cola Energy, of course, JDR Graphics for the beautiful paint scheme. I hate that we're going to have to take this red number and the red decals off of it for Homestead, I'm pretty sure. But, it was a great run this season. I'm definitely proud of it. Thank my guys at Lockdown Racing for all they do. And huge thanks to you guys for putting the broadcast on. And thanks to Anthony for putting the league on, as always.
Well, Jimmy, congratulations on going 2 for 2 at Martinsville in the ERL in 2020. Thanks as always for the chat, and we'll see you next week in Phoenix to close out this ERL season.
Thanks, buddy.
Jimmy Mullis, your race winner this evening. We turn now to P2. Connor Horn finished in second. He'll go into next week with a 9-point lead on Colton Salick in the championship battle. He's with Justin Prince.
Connor, first things first, you're in second just about the entire evening. How are you feeling about this run tonight, knowing the pressure entering this evening at the Paper Club?
I'm happy with it. I'm just glad I was able to finish a race where I deserved to. Last 2 weeks, Kansas, Texas, I ran top 5 all race, and I couldn't get the finish that I probably should have gotten, which was frustrating. We lost out on key points. Obviously, got a penalty at the end of Texas, so any points I would have gained out of the incident there, I lost. Only like a 3-point lead over Nick. He had his incidents. Presley, I don't know what happened to him, but he couldn't get to the front quickly. Colton got up to the front there, so I wish I could have gained a few more points on him and had a more comfortable lead in the Phoenix, but all in all, I was able to, get second at Martinsville with a clean car. I don't think I ever tapped the wall or got any sort of dents on it, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, that's a rarity to say the very least, especially with this circuit's history on the surface. But many drivers, it seemed, especially during that longest run of the race, were thinking they were going to blow the right rear tires. Then in the in-chat text chat, or in-sim text chat, I should say, drivers were saying they had only 10-15% of tire wear. What was the handling like for you in trying to adjust to that balance once everyone got a chance to change tires and realize, oh, hey, these things aren't going to pop. We're just very, very loose on the balance.
Yeah, when I saw the number after I pit stopped, I was kind of shocked. Everyone was joking like it was like a 90-87, but it felt like 20-12. Like it was ridiculous. It felt like they were going to blow, but really they weren't close. I knew it got that sideways with the low downforce packages on these cars at the short tracks now. It gets loose like that. You have to baby these cars off the corners. You kind of have to do the same thing at Phoenix next week. So I guess in that way, it's a sense of good practice for throttle control and all that. It was really just about being careful on the throttle and all that. I was trying to wrap the curbing. I think McKissick, who was a bit faster than me the whole race, he was kind of entering high, maybe arcing it below. I thought that would be worse for the tires, but at the same time, I think he would have wore the right front out more with that and saved his right rear. But in reality, that might have been the better line, but I couldn't run it. I was just wrapping the curb, and it seemed like it was working. My right rear was okay. It felt terrible, but compared to everyone else's, I was able to keep it on the car, and I was able to start pulling on some of the guys on that at the end of that very long run to start the race. So it was really dicey out there, but I thought I had it down decently there.
You mentioned a little bit of some of that preparation for Phoenix. What else are you keeping in mind there, since you enter tonight as the points leader, you grow it 1 more point? It's now essentially down to you and Colton Salick as the favorites for the title.
Yeah, me and Colton, since like the second half of the season started, it's been me and him back and forth. I thought there's times I thought I'd pull away and I just didn't get the finish I probably expected to get, and there's times where he really could have opened a gap and got unfortunate. We've had our share of bad luck and good luck. It's been really back and forth in that sense, and it allowed more people to get into the title fight. And now that things kind of, I guess for Martinsville standards, settled down a little bit today, we were able to, us two were able to get in front of everyone. So going into Phoenix, I just have to focus on really just keeping the car in one piece. I can't afford to race anyone like using my bumper and all that. I can't afford to like dive bump people. I just have to run a clean race, and as long as I can stay somewhere in the top 10, I feel like Colton's gonna have a tough time outpointing me. So as long as I just run a smart race next week, I don't see why I can't win the championship.
Anything or anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Top Flight Computers, jumping on the car a whole season. I appreciate him. Brian Bowers, I appreciate a nice new paint scheme this week, looking pretty slick. So perfect timing for the final 2 races. That's some short tracks that are pretty nice. I love Martinsville. It was a really fun race. Phoenix is going to be just as fun. Good win to Jimmy Mullins. He was obviously class of the field. Probably deserved to be in the Coke Series Final 4, and there's a reason for that. And also McKissick and Salick and a lot of the guys who were up front for the majority of the race for Racing the Clean.
Congratulations on the second place finish. By the way, with your finish, you now have a 9-point lead entering the final round. Congrats.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate y'all.
Connor Horn, P2 tonight. James, back to you.
One more man to speak with, and it is the 99 machine of Colton Salick, who now joins us in the booth. And Colton had a bit of a wild race. You were all over the place in the middle of the pack, in the middle of this race, and then the late charge at the end to come home in the 3rd spot after starting 16th. I don't know if there were more people in this field that passed more cars than you. What was it like from behind the wheel tonight?
Yeah, I was planning on just kind of chilling out in the back and just riding, and then we went 40 laps green. I'm like, well, maybe I should probably start going some places, and obviously dodging wrecks, self spins, all that. And as soon as I got up there, I kind of wasn't really aware. I expected everyone to be way more aggressive, so I was I made 2 mistakes there. The one with Blake, I apologize to him in Discord, but that was pretty bad on my part. I just didn't expect him to try to check up so early. But yeah, a lot of wild wreck avoidances and tough to pass, but pretty fun getting through the field and all that.
Tough to pass, tough to run, and championship implications, as we know they like to say on TV, were abound in this race. As you progressed through it, was the gap to Connor in the standings weighing on your mind? Did it affect how you raced this evening?
I mean, yeah, it would have helped. I mean, the thing that really is going to hold me back is that Texas is the end of Texas last week. I just got impatient and should have just rode in 3rd, and I'd be leading by 15 points right now. But I got too over-aggressive last week, and then I knew the difference was being behind 6 or 10, because I knew neither of us were passing Jimmy, and I was pretty sure we had 2nd or 3rd locked up, unless a 2-3 locked up, unless one of us wrecked. So obviously 6 would have looked better than 10, but anything can happen at Phoenix. Just miss a turn one time and suddenly everything's all different there in the turn 1. So who knows? I'm just gonna go in and drive, and I try to do my best to win, but if he ends up finishing 2nd, nothing I can really do about that. So just go out and run my own race, see what happens after however many laps.
All eyes on you and Connor next week. 9 points is the gap going into Phoenix. So what do you expect? How do you think things are going to play out? And what's generally your game plan heading to the Valley of the Sun to close out this fall season for the ERL?
That's a good question that I don't really have the answer to, but it really depends on what the track kind of feels like. If we have a hot, slick track, probably just try to race for it. But if we have a really cold, an overcast style track, probably be better to kind of ride it out because everyone's going to be more clumped together. But either way, just kind of run my own race and try to put myself in a position like I did tonight, and just, hopefully be able to pull off a win and see what happens with him.
Plenty of people I know you need to thank. So who do you send the shout-outs to for making tonight's run possible?
Not too many. You guys for putting on the show and, putting it out there. Definitely Anthony. I know he had a tough job tonight with being kind of solo up there in race control and in the booth with you guys. So I know tonight was stressful for him. So I got to thank Blake for working with me. Obviously I ended up getting into him at the end, but he was kind of keeping me updated on how stuff was going, but not really anyone else.
Colton, congratulations on your podium finish tonight. Thanks as always for the time, and we'll see you in Phoenix 1 week from tonight.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Colton Salick, P3 this evening, and it sets up that title fight. 9 points between Connor Horn and Colton Salick for the ERL fall season title presented by SimSeeds at Phoenix Raceway as well. Should be a lot of fun, JP.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild, wild race to say the very least, and I'm expecting to be an entertaining one. Phoenix always puts on a good show. It's a very much so driver's track as well, where you also need some rhythm, but it's also a different type of track. Some people don't classify it as a short track because of those differences, but it drives like another flat short track. And the main thing's going to be for the championship fight, I think, here for next week, James, is who's going to be able to manage the tires the best, because there's a chance we see sliding like we do here, especially since Phoenix is in a desert. But also because of just some of the ways you get around that track. It can be difficult to pass there at times if you don't have a good amount of momentum and carry around that racetrack. It's going to be crucial you get a lot of preparation for that race next week.
And Anthony, we know Phoenix tends to be an entertaining place to watch a race from your perspective as league owner. What are you most looking forward to close out this fall season of the ERL?
To be completely honest, I'm hoping we have another finish just like we did last season to close out the championship, where last season it was down to Jimmy Mullis and Alex Bell, two drivers still in this second season of the Esports Racing League, that the championship was ultimately decided at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the final corner on the last lap, coming off of turn 4, side by side. Jimmy Mullis ended up coming away with the championship, and Alex Bell ended up finishing second, but they were tied in that moment. And if we could see something even just close to as exciting, not even as exciting as that, the fans would be in for a spectacular treat. And I'm very excited to see what it all comes down to, not to mention it's a short track again, so it's going to be exciting. There should be a lot of cars. It pays more than any other regular season event has, and on top of that, of course, the champion's going to walk around with a $300 bonus thanks to our title sponsor, Sip Seats.
Plenty of prizes to give away, plenty of fun to be had, and all kinds of action coming your way next Wednesday night, November 4th. The date on the calendar is UB The Circle, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on twitch.tv/ERL_racing, or Anthony's YouTube page, or the ERL Facebook page, and the Podium Esports Facebook page as well. Your home for the action from the ERL, presented by SimSeats season finale from Phoenix Raceway. But before we get to Phoenix, a few events to tell you about in the world of iRacing, and it starts at the top of the hour, the season finale for the Cars Esports Tour, their first ever race for the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. The late models and the super late models will do battle. We'll crown 2 champions in 2 divisions. At the top of the hour on twitch.tv/Podium Esports, 9 p.m. Eastern, the start time for that race. Then Monday night, the huge conclusion to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series season. The Championship 4 go to Homestead Miami Speedway, and we will find out who walks away with the 2020 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series title. It is all about the 4 who made it in and made it happen last night at Texas. Michael Conti won his way in. Ryan Luza pointed his way in. Nick Ottinger, Bobby Zelensky won earlier on in the round of 8. One of those 4 will be the champion. We'll find out who next Monday night, November 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern, a different day and time. It's not the usual Tuesday, 9 p.m. You can find that on iRacing Switch, Facebook, and YouTube channel. Then, middle of that race, you'll want to pull up a second window so that you can get to the Sim 500 Trans Service Cup Series through Texas Motor Speedway. That race is next Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. That's also November 2nd. And then we're back at it with the Esports Racing League presented by SimSeats from Phoenix Raceway, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, November 4th on the ERL Twitch channel. Also, correction, it's Martinsville that the Sim 500 Trans Service Cup Series is at next Monday night. But Wednesday is what matters most for the ERL. We look forward to seeing you at 7:30 p.m. next Wednesday night for the Esports Racing League presented by SimSeats Championship finale from Phoenix Raceway. We'll bring you all the action here on the ERL Twitch channel. It's time to say goodnight from Martinsville Speedway. So for all of us at Podium Esports, Cisco Scamuza, Gary Sexton, and John Theodore, for our colleague up at the booth, Anthony Alfredo, Zach Johnson working race control, and Justin Prince in the booth with Ryan Bauer, the producer. I am James Black, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the Esports Racing League presented by SimSeats from Martinsville Speedway. We'll crown a champion next Wednesday night at Phoenix Raceway.